Welcome back to State of the Nation. Let me go to you very straight in our Abuja studios. Bish Johnson, you have ample knowledge about how security across regions have been tackled. Do you think, for instance, that what we face in our country today, Boko Haram in the northeast, kidnappings and banditry in the southwest and southeastern part of the country as well, prompting the state governments to come together at those regional levels to establish some sorts of security outfit? We know that in the southwest it's called Amotekun. The east haven't come out with a name yet. The north may probably come up with something at some point, we're not sure. But all of this put together a bigger threat than the fears of a coronavirus coming into this country, or even what we face right now, which is Lassa fever?
Gimba, what's your question?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Brilliant. So I was just saying that with the several security challenges that we face in our country, including the ones in the northeast, the ones in the southwest, the south-south, the southeast as well, prompting the governors of those states to come up with some kind of security outfits. Are those bigger threats than what we are faced with in the country today, which is the Lassa fever as well as a possibility of a coronavirus?
Well, personally, I wouldn't think that those are bigger threats to pandemics. I don't know if you read my article about pandemics. Pandemics are serious problems, serious national security threats. If you had read the national security strategy that was launched late last year, you would have noticed that that document equally accounted for our public health sector. Gimba, there are very few armaments that can cause serious fatalities in countries than pandemics of this nature. And when you consider the fact that our country, we have very weak infrastructures to handle this kind of pandemics, we will quickly be overwhelmed. I know that we were able to manage the Ebola virus when it first emerged, but I would think that, I thank our, health workers for being able to contain that disease the way they did. But I will equally think that, we had luck on our side, and we may not always be, that lucky. So if pandemics are not properly managed, they pose serious national security threats to especially developing countries because of lack of infrastructure. I've heard that the federal government is asking people to self-isolate themselves. I don't think that that is adequate enough. I think that isolation should not be voluntary for those who are returning from China. I think it should be an involuntary something where the government isolate people who are coming from particularly China for at least 2 weeks to make sure that this virus does not sneak into the country, because our country could face a much, much more serious problem than Boko Haram, Aswab, or Qaeda, all combined.
Okay, because I just needed to pick you up on those fronts. But let's get back to the main crux of the matter. And let me move to Professor Ado Abubakar at this time. Professor, you have ample knowledge about the kinds of security threats that we face today. But the government, just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, came out to say that it will be funding community policing. And then now the eastern part of the country, the states involved in that, 5 states in the eastern part of the country, they also want to set up what's similar to Amotekun in the western part of the country. Do you think that we're missing something? Is it made clear to you that if the government says that we will fund community policing, and then the regional governments are coming up with their own security initiatives, are we missing something in between?
Thank you very much. To me, this is my take. We wouldn't have to start funding community policing, because that is not, when you look at the policing network, that is not the area we start from. We are supposed to start from neighborhood policing, which is the primary sector of policing. Then we come to grassroots policing before community policing, From community policing, we come to state policing, national policing, and global policing. In this form, how can you jump from the first concept, the second concept, and go to the third concept and say you want to do policing? I don't feel it works that way. We have to go back to the basis. Neighborhood policing, go back to grassroots policing, then come to community policing. That is the only way we can identify our loopholes. That is the only way we can now profile everybody. Now you are going to community policing. Community policing is a very large area. Where do you start from? So my take, the funding. So the agitation is now what, because you have built a wrong platform, that is why the regional concept is coming in. The chief executives of each state is the chief security officer of the states. And when things are getting wrong, what do you do as a chief security officer? Because you are supposed to be held accountable.
Bishop Johnson, what would you say to people who are of the view, Bishop Johnson, what do you think, what would you say, rather, to people who are of the view that all of this security measures that are being taken by regional governments, we must wait altogether to have it as a part of the Constitution before anything can be done, failure of which the federal government itself will be indicting itself against the Constitution?
Well, again, but look, I don't think we have to wait to amend the Constitution for this regional government to be able to, establish their own security architecture. So long as they are not calling them police, because if you even look at what is going on, the federal government is even the #1 violator of our Constitution, if you think of it that way, because now we have the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, which is a police outfit. So with that, you have already violated the Constitution. But look at what these regional governments, these governors are doing. What these governors are doing are trying to, because I believe that policing and security is very much local. So what they are doing is they are setting up some kind of intelligence support for already existing security outfit by the federal government. They are not necessarily setting up police force. So that is why we don't need to amend the Constitution. But personally, I would have loved us to amend the Constitution. This is my personal opinion, so that there will be a uniform framework for the establishment of whether we call it state police or anything that we choose to call it, so that there wouldn't be chaos. It wouldn't be a wild, wild west where every state is doing their own thing, or every region is doing their own thing. Or maybe some of these regional outfits are being set up. We take the form of, ethnic militias, where they will recruit people who are of their ethnicity instead of people who are resident in that area. If we are going to recruit people who are resident in that area as against indigens, the so-called indigens, then we will give it a more broader outfit, and they wouldn't be outfit that will target other ethnicity. That is my concern. But as far as amending the Constitution, I don't think that if the Constitution prohibits
you know what we're going to do at this point, Bishop Johnson, as well as Professor Ibrahim Ado Abubakar and Mr. Leonard Anyogo, this is what we're going to do. We'll continue this discussion because I believe that by next week it is still very topical. We're faced with a security concern that state governments and regional governments are beginning to take initiatives supported by the federal government. We're going to see how that takes us to the next point, but we're going to have to go now. I must thank all of you three for having your time with us on State of the Nation. Bishop Johnson, a security expert formerly with the United States Army, as well as Professor Ibrahim Ado Abubakar, also a systems security engineer, as well as Mr. Leonard Anyogo, a member of the Chatham House. And for you, for being part of the show, we can continue this conversation. You can tweet at Gimbo Umar CTV, hashtag State of the Nation as well. Let's get the discussion on the way on social media as well. Let me hear your thoughts. See you next time. Bye for now.